morning to you. Thanks for being here. We're very excited to kick off our session. Thanks for choosing ours. It's called Building Our Way Back After COVID. We really want to discuss re-engaging, reconnecting, and re-energizing our students. All right, we've got Texas in the house. Awesome. So we'll go ahead and let's see. Do I click next, Michelle? Let's see here.
Yeah.
Did it work? Okay, great. This is my first time presenting with it. So, but Michelle's going to help me out if I get stuck. But yeah, we're just excited to have you this morning. Some of our norms for our session is just, listen and be open. I know it's early, but we want to position ourselves as active listeners today to learn from each other and each other's experiences. We would love for you to engage with us, the presenters, with the topic. Since we are 100% virtual, please interact and use all the features, all the things that this platform has to offer. And just make sure you're encouraging and supporting others. It's a hard time. This is a sensitive and maybe traumatic topic for some. So just please stay sensitive and encourage others. And yeah, again, good morning. Buenos dias. And we'll have Michelle, I'll have Michelle introduce herself in just a second, but my name is Dr. Stephanie Garcia. I am one of IDRA's education associates. My areas of research and contributions to our organization, it varies, but most of my work revolves around STEM and gender equity. And I serve as a project director for one of our EIR grants called Vision Coders, where we hope to increase computational thinking and math skills with about 1,400 eighth grade students here on the south side of San Antonio. Much of what I'll be discussing today is drawn from my experiences as a Latina science teacher educator. And I was a science teacher in eighth grade and middle school, and then all the way up to universities and preparing future teachers. So that's where my experiences are drawing from. Michelle, you want to introduce yourself to our friends?
Yes. Hi, everybody. We're so glad you're here. My name is Michelle Martinez Vega. I am the Chief Technology Strategist at IDRA, and I have a little over 20 years of experience in designing, developing, and administering professional development for educators at the state, regional, and district levels. My work is based on the desire to improve academic achievement through the use of technology. In addition to my technology role at IDRA, I am privileged to work with my IDRA colleagues on both the Vision Coders program and the Valued Youth Partnership program, which is a cross-age tutoring student leadership program. I also serve on the Digital Inclusion Alliance of San Antonio Steering Committee. And so I am super happy to be here. And if you ever have any technology questions, I'm your gal. So please, write down our contact information. We'll have it at the end of the presentation. We're also going to give you a copy of this presentation so you'll know how to reach out to us because we're here to help and we're here to support you guys in your roles. We know y'all are in the trenches doing that good work and we want to support you. Okay, so now it's your turn. What I'm going to do is I'm going to drop a link in the chat. And this is to our Google slide deck. And so if you click on it, it should automatically open another tab on your browser, and then you'll have access to the slides. The reason that we want you guys to do that is because on the next slide, we have a map, and it's an interactive map. And so what I'd like for you to do is take a pen and put it on the state where you're at. Now, if you're not from the United States, there's another map. There's a world map on slide 5, and you can take that pen and place it on where you're coming from. We'd like to know where all of our participants are from and welcome you respectively. So we'll give you a minute to do that. I see people joining the room, so that's awesome.
Yep, I see about 8 of you are in the slide deck. If you're having any trouble with the link, just let us know.
Yeah, just put it in the chat. It looks like a lot of people from Texas. Let's see.
Looks like we've got Florida in the room. Let me see here. My screen is so little. Minnesota. We've got Minnesota in the room also.
Like
Let's see
literally
who
one of my favorite accents.
I know.
I love that accent. That's the thing I love so much about the United States is that depending on where you're from, there's so many beautiful accents.
Yeah, I've got some folks in North Dakota and Minnesota. I love it. Chicago.
All right, looks like we have somebody from Florida, mostly Texas. So howdy y'all, howdy y'all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you might have two. You might feel like your sense of place is, connecting to two places. Feel free to, if your time is kind of split or your heart is split between two states, go for it. You can put both states for us. We'd love to know because I'm a Cali Texan, okay, and I know that kind of contradicts a little bit, but I am. I was born there.
I don't know. There's so many Californians moving to Texas that I feel like that's an absolute thing, Stephanie. That's an absolute thing.
For
All
sure.
right. Well, it looks like we have. Oh no, go ahead.
No, I thought there was another country on slide 5, but I think it's mostly in the U.S. I was just checking in there.
Yeah, yeah. That's so awesome, you guys. Thank you for doing that. We wanted to do this activity to see where y'all are from, but also to make sure you could access the link and that you guys could get into the slide deck. And it looks like you guys are pros. Y'all are doing it. So super appreciative of that. And so we'll go ahead and move on to the next slide and we'll kind of talk about our learning goals. Steph?
For sure. I'll go ahead and use the PowerPoint for a second. It's a little bigger for me to see. But yeah, so we, again, are excited to talk about, building our way back with students and re-engaging students after COVID-19. I see many of you in the chat were excited about the rebuilding, right? And, that's something that we're all exploring together, learning from each other of what's working, what's not working. And so really, as we're exploring this topic a bit more, we've got two different kind of objectives and goals. One is to help synthesize a ton of different research that has been published about this topic, and for you all to share as well your experiences and kind of bring all of that together to help summarize some best practices that re-engage, reconnect, and re-energize students during and after the pandemic. And I say during because I know we're not clear out of the water here. I know if you're from Texas, which many of you are, there's been some recent spikes, and it might happen again as people are traveling and doing things this summer. So I kind of put during because we're not really out of the waters yet, and that's something to be mindful of. But so we really hope to just share and synthesize the best practices. And then the second output we would love to do with you today is to kind of put on our action planning hats and to say, okay, so if these are some of the best practices, how can we transfer that to our spaces? We know that many of you might have different roles. We didn't put that yet in the chat, but if you'd like to share your organization and role, feel free to do that, just so we know if some of you are in the classroom setting, if you're in the ed leadership, administration role or district role, or some of you might be in educational service centers or policy work or nonprofits and other institutions and organizations. You could have lots of different hats in this room. So we would love to just kind of explore what would this best practice look like in your space? How can we put it to work? So we would love to hear a little bit about what roles you guys have in the chat like you're doing. That'd be super helpful, just so that when we're doing action planning, we can kind of know, everybody's experiences are kind of being drawn from and touched on in our conversations. So stick with us. We're excited to learn from you today and to try to put our heads together to create some action plans before the end of the session.
Yeah, well, it looks like we have somebody from Dwight Middle School. We know Dwight Middle School.
Hey, Dwight. We love Dwight. Oh, that's so cool.
All right, so now we're going to kind of decompress, or not decompress, but maybe debrief a little about the experience that we had over the past couple of years, right? So the past couple of years have been hard. And we know that you guys have had a lot of different challenges. So we want to just kind of stop and think about what the experience was like, for educators and for students. At this time, we're just going to pause for a moment, and we're going to reflect, and we're going to watch 2 videos. And those videos kind of talk about the teacher experience, and also another video on the student perspective. And just like what Stephanie said, we know that the pandemic's not over. It's kind of over, but it's not over. And so we want to, kind of center the first half of this discussion on what the experience was like. So this is the first video we're going to show. And if you guys don't hear the audio, please let me know. But I'm going to go ahead and play that video.
New. I think I have to say unprecedented.
March 13th, 2020 was the day that we went home and thought we were going home for 2 weeks. And it turned into 2 years. It just felt very surreal. It felt like, oh, okay, 2 weeks we'll be back once this gets sorted out. The kids were really sad. It was really a tough moment for them because kindergarten is so much about the socialization and the life skills.
So today when I...
When we were hybrid, I felt like, oh my gosh, I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. I felt very hopeful. I was super excited to see us in person. They reacted as though they had never met us, didn't know who we were. One of the students looked up at me and was like, "You're real?" Let's do pink today. I think we were just longing for that sense of normalcy that when we were in it, it felt really exciting. And then all of a sudden we realized this is not fully teaching. This isn't exactly what we wanted to go back to. This isn't normal.
So Monday, I don't have to do this, but right now I have recess duty and I have to wear my mask.
The mask mandate for my school lifted on Monday, the 14th. Today is the first time that I will teach without a mask on since 2020. They were so excited to see their friends' faces and to see my face, like it's nice. I feel like the kids saw it as this step towards normalcy. One of my students looked at me and said, "So COVID's over? It's over?" I was like, well, it's never gonna be over, but it's a lot better now. It's hard to put it any other way than to say that the students are now traumatized. If we're confused, if we're angry, if we're sad, if we're grappling with all of this, students are too.
So I still feel very strange not wearing my mask. I thought that I would be very excited, and I'm kind of not.
My students are still having the same challenges that they had in the past 2 years, Taking off our masks didn't end up being this great unmasking monumental moment that I thought it was going to be, but I am hopeful for the future, and every year I think we're going to return to normalcy a little more and more as we go.
So I see in the chat, there's a lot of people that are that watched that and kind of remembered what their experience was like. So thank you for putting all of that in the chat. Please, keep adding your comments. We really want to, hear what you guys have to say. I'm going to go to show you the next video, and that video is the student perspective.
And it was sort of like an out-of-body experience.
A staircase of continual surprises.
Sat in my house like everyone else for several months.
There have been a lot of tough times during the pandemic.
2020, 2021 have been both the craziest and dullest year. Going home and living with my family was not something that I intended to do in the middle of my junior year of college.
We thought that it was going to be, a couple weeks, then it turned to a couple months, and eventually it's turned to an entire year plus now.
I was very afraid of catching COVID-19. I was nervous to leave the house a lot. Definitely affected my mental health.
We were being torn away from this image that we had built in our minds of what our college experience was going to be like. That reality hit hard.
The social aspect of the pandemic, it's been really, really hard to gather with people who don't live right with you.
We've lost everything from, a normal Duke game setting. We've lost everything from, FDoc.
To not be in person in class, to not sing the alma mater at every sporting event, and to not enjoy those Carolina traditions we know oh so well.
I love my family, but college age is such a time for, figuring out how to live with yourself and with others and just being able to care for yourself. And I feel like I really missed out on that.
I have to say that I don't know where the misconception that virtual classes are easier came from.
I have struggled with motivation during virtual learning because it's not the same type of interaction that you would usually get.
Now our lectures are in our rooms and there's no real border between I'm doing school and I'm doing not school, and you just sort of feel like you're always working, and if you're not working, you should be working.
For seniors at UNC, we've all kind of banded together and have reached out and kind of have existed in this perpetual anxiety that we all kind of live in.
I have found the most comfort in reaching out to my classmates and the TAs.
One thing that got me through some pretty hard moments this past year was the act of journaling. Journaling gave me an outlet to express myself and really release any pent-up frustrations that I had.
Going on walks, being in nature, being outside, being in the sunshine, all of these things have drastically improved my mood.
Music has been a super helpful outlet for me during the pandemic. It's an hour where I get to let go of stress and worry and make art that I'm really proud of.
I've also become a tree dad. I have about 6 plants in my room right now.
I'm extremely excited to get back to some sense of normalcy.
And now I do have very high hopes for when I do return to campus.
I personally am really excited for game days and big crowds at big events.
I'm really into men's basketball, and I'm also really into women's soccer. I'm most looking forward to getting back to that, as well as drinking from the old well.
I'm also excited for daily walks to class.
I do look forward to the day where I can come back as an alum and see Carolina for what I remembered it as a sophomore and a first year.
I don't want to say it was for the better, because it wasn't, but it was something that we were all able to adjust to, and I think that on the whole, myself and other students have done really well of continuing our education in the middle of a global pandemic. I think that's a very difficult thing to do, and I've seen a lot of people really, persevere.
All right, welcome back. Sorry about that echo, y'all. I keep forgetting. It's like I'm talking and then I put the video on, and so I apologize for that. But thanks for putting it in the chat and reminding me to turn my mic off. But yeah, that was a nice little decompressing debrief of what a lot of us were feeling, I think. And I love the student video because maybe our younger students can't articulate what these older students were feeling, but we know that our younger students felt it too, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, it's like, it was just a totally, the seniors, I felt so bad for the seniors of 2020 and 2021. I mean, they didn't get to experience a lot of the traditions that other students get to do. So we wanted to show you that video so that when we go out into our breakout rooms, so what we're going to do next, we kind of ground ourselves in our experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much for sharing, in the chat. This is exactly what we are hoping to do is like Michelle said, share that student and teacher perspective, even though this session is titled, ReEngaging Students. Many of these same best practices, y'all, actually apply to teachers too. So if we talk about going outside is like really like healing, and really nature's like so healing and good for students, it might be really nice for you too, right? So some of these best practices we're sharing and things we're going to be talking about might be really helpful for you. So I just wanted to mention that. But yeah, we hope that these videos help stir up some thought. I can see in the chat that it did, because we'd like to try out our breakout room, round number 1. We have 2 rounds of breakout rooms. So this is our first big activity. We'd love for you to get to know each other a bit more, almost kind of pose these breakout rooms as listening sessions where you can come together and talk about some of these big ideas. So Michelle and I put together this list of questions to help kind of anchor you a little bit, or to serve as icebreaker questions. But feel free to stray a little bit from it if you want. They're just topics for you to start discussing. As you can see on the next slide, we have breakout rooms that you'll go to. And if you are like in breakout room number 1, we want one person, not everybody, but one person at least, to serve as the recorder. And the recorder is utilizing that Google slide link. Michelle, could you repost that just in case? I don't know if like people jumped in later, if they have the link. But you can go to our Google slide link and go to your breakout room and just start to jot down some ideas here. And I kind of broke it down into like just general topics for discussion, like what were your experiences like, or maybe lessons learned, or what supports do you wish you had in that transition of kind of building our way back to that normalcy, that sense of normalcy, or coming back to school. And also, what surprises did you experience? What was really unexpected through this whole transition of maybe in person, and then all of a sudden you're virtual, and then maybe you were hybrid, and then you're back in person, or I don't know. Everybody's experienced this differently, but we just want to have these listening sessions to learn from each other about what you experienced. That way we can kind of transition more into some best practices next. But yeah, we just want to get to know you and let you get to know each other. Again, if one person can serve as the recorder, that'd be fabulous. Just jot down some scratch notes here and we'll share out before we have a little break. Okay. Any questions that you have, feel free to put in the chat. Michelle, I'm going to have you're the mastermind behind these breakout rooms a little bit more.
I'm going to go ahead
and how to do that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open the breakout rooms. When I open them, you're going to see a pop-up on the window, and it's going to have 10 rooms. Now, there are 17 of you guys, and I'm thinking maybe just split them into 2. This way we have like a really fruitful conversation, or maybe 3. Let's do 3, right? So there's a little over, or what do you think, Steph?
Yeah, I think if we had maybe three people's a good number, 3 to 4. I think that'd be a good starting point for our breakout rooms for sure. Okay. So we won't utilize all the breakout rooms. We weren't sure how many would come this morning, so we made a bunch. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know, right? It's the 3rd day and it's a morning session, right? So we had no idea how many people were going to come. So again, we're just so happy that you guys are with us. But okay, so you're going to see a pop-up window and you're going to see 10 rooms. Of those 10 rooms, we just want you to pick from the first 3. If I see that there's too many people in one room, then I'm going to move you. So don't get shocked if you get swooshed away and into another room. But so we're just going to pick from the first 3. Another thing is you have the ability to put yourself on camera and unmute your mic when you're in the breakout rooms. So please feel free to do that. If you don't want to come on camera, I get it. It's not a big deal. But at least unmute yourself so that we can have that really fruitful discussion. And then Stephanie and I will pop into the rooms and check on y'all and see if y'all have any questions. Like I said, if you don't want to be on camera, that's totally fine. We get it. All right, so I'm going to open them now. And remember, just pick from the first 3 rooms.
And I think we have about 15 minutes too. Mm-hmm.
All right, awesome. Thanks for adding that, Steph.
let's see. If you are here, can you put here in the chat? Because it's hard to tell sometimes.
If you are with us, give us a sign.
I know. Okay. It's like, it's a like Zoom, but not like Zoom, you know? So I'm still learning. Thank you. Okay.
Awesome. You know, we were poking into the different rooms before we debrief. We were poking into the different rooms, and it was so, I think, indicative of the topic that, like, in one room, people were off mic, were talking, and they were on camera. And then in another room, everybody was just writing in the chat. Nobody was talking. Nobody was on camera. And then on another room, it was kind of a half and half thing. And so I think that's probably what you guys experienced with your virtual classrooms, right? They were just, yeah, there's, you know, it's like, no matter the level of encouragement or anything, you know, I think some students were just like, nah, not doing it, you know, or the technical difficulties, right? So, you know, I saw some of you actually leaving the session and coming back, and that was probably happening due to technical difficulties. So, you know, I think that what we're experiencing right now is a small snippet of what you guys experienced over the last 2 years. So I just thought that was really interesting.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I didn't think about that, Wendy, losing points for PPAIS. That's nuts. I have so many feelings about that, but I don't know. What do you do, right? It's crazy. Okay, so when we were jumping around to different conversations, first of all, I just want to say, I want to lead with thank you. Thank you for sharing. Sometimes, especially since many of us probably experienced loss and death and grief, you don't want to revisit that, you know, you don't want to think about that again, or bring that up, or something that was traumatic that you experienced. And so I just want to lead with a thank you. Like, I see you, I appreciate you. Thank you for sharing. Even if it was hard, I appreciate that. I just want to be sensitive to that. And what we're going to do is, before we go to just a quick stretch break, because it's the science teacher in me is, you need like a little, a teacher in me is like, you need a brain break for just a minute, maybe refill your coffee or run to the restroom. So we'll give you a 5-minute break in just a second, to stand and stretch. But could you share out, the recorder, just briefly share out a couple points. I mean, y'all took these notes seriously. I see lots and lots of notes, and we have time to kind of cover some really big ideas in each column. So if you could, wait, can they unmute or no?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. If you let me know who your recorder was, then I can unmute you so that you can kind of talk a little bit about your slide. So group 1 or breakout room 1, who was your recorder? If you can type that in the chat, I will unmute them. Okay, let's see here. Ashley for group 2.
We're assuming you can unmute. So if for some reason you can't, just let us know in the chat. I think that's the only way we can hear from you.
Okay, Mandy, you should have the ability to do it. So if you go up to your top navigation and click on the microphone icon, you should be able to unmute.
Ashley, I feel like you would be Ashley, I think you'd be like my teacher bestie. You know what I mean? There's always that teacher bestie. I feel you. Okay, so Mandy, for group 1, go for it.
Yeah.
Sure. Just briefly, in our first column, we said that, you know, universally we saw our students and ourselves and our colleagues experience a fair amount of loss, death, and grief. Some of us had even more on top of COVID, including things like hurricanes. We agreed and had universal experience that things haven't really been normal since the pandemic has hit, and that we had a fair amount of hybrid and virtual in addition to issuing packets as part of our modalities for how our experience was during COVID-19. And we all became better at using platforms like Canvas or Google Classrooms or Zoom.
So that was summary of one. Lessons learned, what worked, what didn't. What worked is we focused on letting students know they are loved. We continued to wear masks and practice and modeling even after maybe it wasn't required anymore. Less is more in terms of administrative efforts and trying to like maybe give a break instead of like always push. We really felt the digital divide, made some inequities in experience. So what didn't really work was maybe the paper packet. Like it worked for, I think, connection, but wasn't always useful in terms of academic supports, but it was still all we had to work with. Not all of us had Chromebooks at a 1-to-1 rate. So, but we do now. So that's kind of also something that ended up working. And we found that some meetings and IEP meetings with digital synchronous options made it so that more folks could participate, and that's been normed now. Supports we wish we had leadership and decision makers who might have enabled a break at some point from school, as opposed to just pushing through it to make it like just because you have to, as opposed to should we. We thought, like, calling it off at some point, just stopping for a while could have been really powerful for everybody to catch their breath. More federal supports to reduce or give permission for pausing, as opposed to schools doing it just to be in compliance for whatever needs. We wanted to make sure that there is a continued embrace of what we have come to use as new supports and fixes, which basically means for us to maintain the digital tools and digital options as needed. And we would have a request that we really hope that there could be a national clearinghouse of technical assistance providers, because there was a fair amount of assistance, I think, happening and swirling. But if you weren't at the state level or maybe even the leadership level, that might not have gotten to you in your classrooms. Lastly, surprises, what was unexpected. We thought technology utilization and preparation, like that was a big thing at first, and folks have really stuck with it. So we see a lot of use by parents, colleagues, and students. And then also we were surprised that we saw internet providers really try to work with schools to provide access for students who hadn't previously had that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's so true. I mean, even still now, right? Michelle, who was it? T-Mobile?
Yeah,
was
T-Mobile.
offering free, what was it, devices with cellular attached to them, right?
Yeah, so basically what they were doing, and it's not something that's happening anymore because the deadline already passed, but you're right, the internet service providers were really working with the school districts to ensure that the students had internet. And also the other thing is, like, with the Federal Reserve Bank has it's called the CRA, which is the Community Reinvestment Act. And so school districts were able to work with the Federal Reserve Bank to apply for grants that would actually lay infrastructure into the ground so that rural communities could have access to the internet. Now, not everybody did it. We know the digital divide is still a real thing, and it's a real challenge that you guys are experiencing. But it was so amazing to see people band together during this pandemic and really kind of move the needle a little bit in regards to the digital divide and the homework gap. So I totally agree. The other point that I wanted to make was I used to work at a school district doing technology training. And so, we kind of felt a little, as a technology trainer, sometimes it felt like, technology was a neat to have. So NEAT, neat to have, not a need, NEED. During the pandemic, that totally changed, right? So you may have received training at your district at some point, but it was just a need to have. So it wasn't something that you really focused on. And then all of a sudden, everybody's thrusted into the virtual world, and you're having to recall everything that you've been trained. And it's almost impossible to recall after months ago you may have received the training, maybe even years ago. So, I mean, you guys were definitely on an uphill battle. Again, at IDRA, I do technology training. So if you guys need something, I'm not trying to pitch my wares, but I want you to know that we're here to support you. So, definitely, if you do want technology training, then, let us know and we can help with that. Let's go ahead and move to the next group. And it looks like Ashley is going to share out. So Ashley, you should see your mic icon at the top. And if you don't mind, take it away.
Hey, so for group 2, what were our experiences like? There were quite a few teacher training sessions, and we pivoted to Zoom based sessions, and teachers felt that worked well. And then one of our group members, Cambry, also taught or worked in an after school program.
Mm-hmm.
And so you had to meet with staff and make boxes with hygiene products and snacks and school supplies. And so then it was like, it was heartbreaking that you were unable to physically touch the children. So that was a challenge because they wanted to hug you and interact with you.
Yeah.
Some lessons learned. Zoom teaching online worked. Shout out to group 1 because your thought made me realize, like the virtual meetings as an option and including all staff. Like I was itinerant this past year, so having virtual meetings helped me attend more of my IEP meetings and other things that I would have missed. Lots of training needed on the front end. Online learning for kindergartners didn't really work that well because they didn't have attention span for all day. Teaching writing online was a challenge to first graders, even with a .cam available. District updated tech for all staff. And coming back, it seemed like we all forgot everything that was great about online. There was no pause to even reflect on what was working well, and people just were rushing to get students back to grade level. What we wish that we had: check-ins for students and staff, more resources on how to be a better distributor of lessons virtually, more mental health supports for traumatized children and staff. We went and there was a case where a school social worker wasn't available all year long or most of the year, and lots of kids with anxiety. So that kind of fell on either a teacher or a dean to be filling that role, and then they weren't available to do their work. Permission to focus on community building rather than, get the grade level, get back to grade level and get ready for the standardized test. What was unexpected: doing work from home, doing home visits, the amount of community building that can happen when you teach online only, because there weren't any masks during that 2020 to 2021 year. So you were able to actually establish a community. Increase in creativity when teaching virtually, energized by a new challenge, but difficult to work in person.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate you volunteering, speaking out anyway on this. And I think that, I think that's what I keep hearing is that last thought of how difficult this last year has been. I think a lot of people thought, okay, we're going back and, it'll be better, it'll be easier. But interestingly enough, I just keep hearing over and over from teachers just how hard this may have been for many teachers that I know personally, the hardest year they've had so far, for lots of different reasons, and some of which you guys are already touched on for sure. Thank you so much, Group 2, for putting so much effort into this. I think also with after school and out of school time that you touched on kind of in column 1. I mean, when the kids weren't there was no after school and clubs and, I don't know, I think sports, everything just stopped, right? And I think everybody that were in those roles before were pulled into new roles to just kind of help, tame the fires, so to speak, that were happening and support the needs of the students and the teachers and the campus and the families, and delivering food like you've touched on to groups. That's huge. And I think Yeah, so weird, right? So weird. And I think the littles, thinking about kinder, how do we engage them online? That was really rough too. And so I'm glad somebody mentioned that. We've got some best practices that I think will touch on a few of these things that were shared in group 2 for sure. Keeping it on time, let me, unless Michelle, you want to add anything, should we go to group 3?
Yeah, let's go ahead and go to group 3. The only thing that I was going to add, and I feel like you guys are touching on it, is just the, we thought a lot about those students that maybe didn't have perfect home lives, right? And so the trauma that they've experienced over the past 2 years was compounded on that, not necessarily having a safe and welcoming home, and school was the safe and welcoming place for them. So, we're just kind of thinking about that too. But okay, so group 3, I didn't see who you guys nominated for the speaker. Can someone put in the chat who would like to speak on group 3? If not, we can just look at the slide. You want to do that?
There might be some overlap. Let's go ahead and go to slide, 13? Let's see here. I'm going to look on my screen just because it's a little bigger over here. Okay. So I think looking at their experiences, very similar. It was difficult. It was challenging to engage students. Even though I saw in some other groups, I see here there was like limited professional development. So that's interesting to me because I saw that there were like a lot of like kind of webinars, lots of trainings to help equip teachers in that transition. So I'm not sure if that was before, like during, after, or what kind of PD was limited there. But that's an interesting point. Disengagement, survival mode for sure. I think everybody was just trying to make it. So I feel that there. Lessons learned, tech materials and updates. A lot of districts adopted new technologies. Some big vendors like provided technology for free, certain platforms for free for like a year or 2 years. So that was really helpful for many districts, and especially those serving a lot of Title I campuses or campuses that didn't have the money to make those purchases like on demand in that moment when they needed it. So that was really helpful when those districts did that. TEA, I think, did that in Texas Education Agency. For those who aren't from here, I think they purchased some like subscriptions and licenses, made it available for schools everywhere. Supports, what do you wish you had? Technology for students, parents, educators. Some more technology for sure. Difficult to cover, instruction, no subs, right? Teacher shortage. This is what we're really feeling, really hurting. Even folks in the district level are getting pulled down to teach in classrooms. That's tearing them away from some of their responsibilities, but it's the need. We need to have teachers in those classrooms. So, and then student support, SEL is huge. We keep talking about mental health, social emotional learning. We're definitely going to hit on that today and some of the best practices before we leave today's session. And surprises, what was unexpected. Time, I'm not sure in what way that's written there, but for sure maybe lack of time, or maybe with the students, or something like that.
Somebody from group 3 can maybe elaborate on that. It looks like Kimberly is. So the time took to adjust.
Oh, to adjust. Yes, of course. That's totally unexpected. Yeah. How long we're in the virtual setting. Yeah. I mean, some of you never got to like say goodbye to your students, right? In 2020, it was like, oh, we'll be back in 2 weeks. And then it's like, no, we're not coming back, right? Like the teacher had shared in the video, time was definitely kind of taken away, and then how long everything lasted was a big surprise. COVID absences and illnesses for sure. A lot of teachers, students, faculty, if they had health issues and maybe couldn't be in school because they were really susceptible to getting really sick, right? So sometimes They're just now going back to school, like right now, right? And yeah, fear mitigation. So these are some really big takeaways. And the purpose, again, was for us to kind of have these listening rooms to kind of ground and center ourselves and to learn from each other too. Some takeaways about supports and surprises. And that's all going to help transition us to some of these best practices that we're going to explore next and figure out how to transfer some of these best practices into our practice so that we can really help build our way back and re-engage and remotivate and re-energize our students that we're working with. Do you have anything to add, Michelle, before we go to a quick stretch break?
No, I think you guys covered it well, and you're right. There was so many challenges, and you guys really listed that in a very concise way. So as Stephanie said, thank you so much for sharing and getting us prepared for the next section of the session. So now we're going to transition to a break. So bio break. If you need to just step away from the computer, if you need to get a cup of coffee, whatever it is that you need to do, we're going to take 15 minutes. Or we should still do 15 minutes, right?
Well, no, let's do more like 10 maybe.
Okay.
Let's do more like 10 minutes. So, or we can come back at, let's see, let me look at the agenda real quick. Yeah, we can come back at, let's say 10, 55, 57, top of the hour. Look at us. Let's go for 11, but you got to come back, okay?
Yeah, you have to come back.
No, I'm good. No, come back at 11, okay? Plenty of time to go to the restroom, go take your dog potty, go grab coffee and come back, okay? So let's do 11. All right, we're back. It's 11. I hope you came back refreshed and ready to go for just one more hour together before you get to go have a long lunch break. I think that's built into the schedule overall for the convening. So, holding true to the theme of the convening, power people plan, we're going to transition into planning mode. So as we kind of learn, and kind of leverage some of these best practices, going back to one of the learning goals for this session was to really synthesize. And I think we can read about all the research, and sometimes it rings true for our personal experiences and what we're seeing and hearing and feeling. And sometimes it doesn't. So that's why we really wanted to combine both the listening sessions where you're able to kind of learn from each other, listen to each other, get to know each other a little bit more in your roles and where you guys are working at within the field of education. And as we transition to some share outs of Michelle and I are just going to give a brief kind of recap of 10 best practices that we came across as we were reading a ton of articles, which are shared in the presentation. There's a slide in the slide deck that has a link to all the articles and videos that we were reading. But we're going to just recap these, and then we're going to let you take a deep dive into a couple of these best practices and really hone in on them and try to build some action plans around them. So stay with us as we kind of share out just a few best practices. We'll let you all dig in, and then we'll share out so that everybody kind of hears a little bit more details about these best practices and what they really look like in practice in different settings in education. So Michelle, if you want to, let's see, are you taking the first 5? Yeah.
All right. So kind of like what Stephanie was saying, we're going to take that deeper dive. We're going to learn from each other. I'm going to cover the first 5 strategies. So I think, I've been attending some of the sessions, and I know you guys have as well over the past 2 days. And there's been a lot of discussion about, the whole child, teaching the whole child, and being reflective and really just taking into account humanity first. right? We know that it's been challenging. We know that people have experienced death. They've experienced illness. They've experienced obstacles and barriers that they had never experienced before the pandemic. And so, you know, we want to definitely center humanity and mental health, because we know that you can't learn unless you're in the space for learning. And you can, and the space for learning is achieved when you have all of your other needs met. And so that's what humanity first means. We also know that relationships are everything, right? I think there was a presentation earlier in the week where it was, you don't learn from people you don't like, right? So, you know, it's like having those relationships and the trust with your educator and the students is really important. Another thing that we experienced during the pandemic was civil unrest, right? So the Black Lives Matter movement. I mean, that was huge, and it was really important to our students. And that wasn't the only issue, right? So there's so many students that are experiencing their world, and they want to participate in it, right? They want to talk to their teachers about current events. And so making room for civil engagement and time to talk about what's going on in the world, just really important. Sometimes you need to kind of talk about things before you can move on and learn. I attended an ethnic study session yesterday, and it really drove the point home. You know, after George Floyd happened, the students were like, we can't learn about math. We're too mad about this situation. And so taking, you know, just a couple of minutes, even though it's a hard conversation, just letting the students talk about their feelings is really important. Engaging in self-awareness and self-reflection, right? Self-awareness and self-reflection is so important. I mean, that's what we did this morning, right? Sometimes we need to take that inventory. Like, why are we feeling the way we feel? Why am I so distraught about this, about what's happening? What can I do to improve the situation, right? So, you know, taking that time to just be self-aware. Like the student said in the video, what really helped her was journaling. And so for some students, you know, they need to get it out and they don't know who to talk to. Maybe who they talk to is their journal, right? So creating that space and letting students know that they need to decompress themselves, you know, and it helps the educators, you know, like Stephanie said earlier, it's super important that we not only apply these best practices to our students, but to ourselves, right? We have to have grace for each other. We have to reflect on what's going on. Because again, you know, sometimes doing a self-inventory and thinking about what's, you know, I mean, because sometimes I feel crazy. Like, why do I feel so, and it's because I forget, you know, all the things I'm tackling. So, you know, you write it down. Okay, this is going on, this is going on, this is going on, so on and so forth. You make that list, and then you're like, oh, okay, no wonder I feel this way. And then you just kind of tackle what you can, because we can't be all things to all people, and we can't do it all. But sometimes you need to reflect on those things to know that. The last one that I'd like to talk about is digital inclusion. Right? The homework gap is real. I don't know if you guys have heard that term, but basically the homework gap is the idea that there's students out there that do not have access to the technology that they need to fully participate in online education. So whether that be, I mean, we saw households where they had one computer and there was 4 students, right? And so what do? If there's a teacher that is demanding that the student be online for a certain period of time on camera, maybe it's not possible for the student to do that. So just kind of knowing your students and their situations will help alleviate a lot of frustration because again, we don't know all the situations that are occurring. And that's the same, again, thinking about the students, but we also got to think about the teachers. I live in a rural area. So, thankfully in the rural area that I live in, we have fiber. And so I have a great internet connection, but I also know that just because there's fiber where I live doesn't mean 2 blocks down from where I live, they have fiber, right? Because the electric co-op that's laying the fiber is doing it piece by piece. So just because I have access doesn't mean somebody else does. So again, it's just taking into consideration all of the challenges that students and teachers are facing. And then just, again, you have to make the unseen seen, right? And know what the problems are so that you can address them. And digital inclusion and the homework gap are definitely things that you guys are probably very familiar with. But, just because we're back in school doesn't mean that all students are back in school. There's a lot of kids that are still in a hybrid situation. All right, so the next 5, Stephanie will cover.
For sure. So looking at the top left there, learning and unlearning. I saw that trend in so many different articles where it talked about we were kind of forced to learn new practices, right? All of a sudden, like, oh, I have this pressure to be an expert in this new area. And it's this like, I got to be a learner again and learn all these new things. And then also the flip side of that coin is, what are things I need to unlearn, right? What are some habits, some techniques, some tools even that aren't serving my students well, and I need to reposition myself, which makes me kind of, I need to be open to unlearning things as well. So this is a really interesting topic to get into. It talks a little bit about being adaptive and responsive and saying, hey, we don't know what the future holds. Okay, right? We've been surprised. And so now it's like, what are some new things that are up ahead? Who knows? So I just need to be open and adaptive. The other one here, it says clear and consistent expectations. And that kind of goes back to, and I think one of the groups listening sessions I was in, and I think group 1 or 2 talked about keeping it simple, right? Like sometimes it gets so crazy and there's so many platforms and there's so many things, and it gets kind of overwhelming for not just the teacher, but the students. They feel it too. And so keeping things simple, using clear expectations, setting good routines, and just finding those and that really do serve your students well and serve them best to ensure that they're positioned well for success academically, emotionally, everything. Let's see, going outside. I am like an environmental science kind of buff, and I love getting kids outside. It connects in many ways. It's very intersectional. Like when you think about ethnic studies, when you think about the history of Black and Brown folks in nature, in the outdoors, it's just really interesting to get into this. I could talk about it for a whole other session. There's this really great nonprofit, if you're in San Antonio or Texas, called Black Outside, and their mission truly is to get more students and youth connected and reconnected to the outdoors. It's something where they want to diversify the outdoors and really help ensure that there's safe spaces outdoors and equitable spaces outside for students. But yeah, nature could be really healing. And having that screen time's great, but unplugging and getting away from that is also really a reflective experience and really enjoyable experience as well. Let's see, representation and mentorship matters. Kind of goes to that saying of you can't be what you can't see, right? Like really building a little bit on the relationships point that Michelle talked about, but really thinking about who am I connecting my students with, what resources out there, what nonprofits are out there, what clubs are out there, who or what college students could connect with my secondary students, what secondary students can connect with elementary students to really build that mentorship throughout that cradle to career pipeline to support students in their trajectory and where they're going and where they're headed, right? So mentorship and representation definitely matters. Some of you are going to be exploring that one. And then looking at the last point here about interactive and active learning, it talks about mixing it up, right? We do see that, yes, there's balance, right? There's simplicity, but also like use technology well, right? Like use technology well, use curriculum experiences, set up learning experiences for students where it is active learning, where it's challenging, it's rigorous, it uses that critical thinking, and it's cooperative, right? They're learning with others. And so how do we do that? What does it look like? So I'm excited to share a little bit more about these through these slides. We will, if we can go to the next slide, this is the plan. So I don't know how many attendees we have at the moment, but we had about, I think, we're at 14 now. Cool. So we have this kind of map to help guide us. So this is our last and final activity. It's a breakout room activity. You're going to be with 2 to 3 people, and you're going to be in charge of kind of digging into a couple of the practices and building an action plan that transfers what we know to what we do, right? And that looks different with many of you because some of you are in the classroom, some of you are in out of school time orgs, some of you are in nonprofits or other institutions, state level institutions. So you guys can kind of all decide on kind of whose experience or whose kind of context you're going to build upon for your action plan. And you can mix it up. You can say, okay, well, this best practice, we'll really look at the classroom context. And then this other one, we'll try to think a little more broader. So we'll leave it up to you of what that looks like. But I want you to see here, your breakout room will designate what practices you're diving into and what slides you're working from. So it's the same concept. We've already practiced how a recorder will type onto the slide. It's the same concept. You'll see that within the slides that are designated here. So we'll go through a quick example. If you can go to the next slide, Michelle. Let's say Michelle and I are in group 1. If we're in group 1, that means that we're looking at this slide, which kind of has a recap of the best practice and has questions to consider for me to talk about with Michelle. And then on the next slide, Michelle and I will think about, well, how would this be implemented in fill in the blank, right? Like we have to decide what's our context. Is this kind of something we want to try out in the classroom? What would it look like? What are outcomes we would look for? What were evidences we could collect or how people would kind of evaluate if this is working or not working with my students? Who's responsible or what supports would need to be in place? What resources would I need to help accomplish this, right? So this is a simple action plan template to help kind of break down some of those big milestones as you action plan. And it's okay if you don't finish. We just want to kind of see you start to map out, how do I put this strategy into my practice? What does it look like? Because again, theory is really helpful, but we really want tangible takeaways you can apply like tomorrow if you wanted to. So I hope that's helpful. Because there's not 10 breakout rooms, there's 5. You're going to do this twice, okay? So if the next slide, Michelle and I would look at breakout room number, same breakout room, but we're looking at strategy 2. And we're going to say, okay, digital divide. All right, let's talk about it. Let's think about it. And then on slide 22, the next slide, let's go ahead and figure out how we would address this strategy in our practice. So I hope that makes sense. If not, feel free to jot down your questions in the chat. But Michelle's using slide 18 as kind of an anchor to help break you out into groups. Michelle, did you have a strategy? You said something about how you wanted to do breakout rooms a little differently this time.
Yeah, I'm going to move people into the breakout rooms. And so just give it a couple of, it's going to take me a minute to assign everyone. So don't be alarmed, but you'll be moved in momentarily. So I'll go ahead and I'll start that. let's see.
Oh, and while you're setting that up, Mandy, yeah, a lot of these things are like, oh, this was true before the pandemic. Well, a lot of the articles that we're reading, these are all focused like kind of post during COVID-19. So a lot of these are taking that angle of like the digital divide, for example, right? That was true before. It's just more apparent right now. Relationships were important before, but even so now, as we're re-engaging and re-energizing and we're reconnecting with our students, relationship has to be more intentional. We have to figure out ways to try to build those relationships back. So I totally agree with you. You're like, wow, this has always been true. Yeah. But what does that look like now as we're re-engaging students? It might look a little bit differently. That's something really important to talk about with your group. Thanks so much for bringing that up.
Hey, everyone. I think we're all back. I hope you guys had some great discussions. Again, the point of the breakout rooms is that we learn from each other and that we look at these strategies and try to come up with a plan, right? So thank you guys for all the work that you've done. We see that on your slides, you've filled them in. Thank you. And that's what we needed. So what we're going to do now is the same as we did before. We want someone to share out from each group. And so who wants to share out from group 1? And if you can just put the name in the chat. Okay, Ashley's touching her nose. So I'm going to say, Ashley, I'm going to promote you again.
Was she in group 1?
I don't know. I don't know who was in group 1.
I think she was in group 2, but I don't know.
Oh, okay. So Camber, okay, so group, let's see here.
That means not it. That's great.
And then Cambry for group 2.
Yeah, so go ahead and volunteer your friends in the chat for as we wrap up. We're just going to do a quick share out because some people really honed in maybe on one practice, and we just want to kind of briefly share out before we wrap up the session, okay?
Nilka, do you want to share for group 1?
No problem, Rachel. Okay, Cambry's going for 2. Y'all are too cute. I'm having too much fun with you today. All right, Nilka has mic abilities. There you go.
All right, I'm going to make Nilka group 1.
Thank you, Dr. Aviles.
So Nilka, if you can turn on your mic and share out for the group 1, that would be amazing.
Slide so, what, 22 or 20?
Let's see here. Yeah, 19 through 21. I hear somebody. Is that Kimberly?
It's Kim. Yes. Hi. But that's not my slide number. We were actually on slides 31 through 34.
Okay, Nilka. Well, let's go ahead and try Nilka first, and then we'll move over to your slides, Kimberly. Nilka, can you unmute?
Maybe she's not available.
So this is great because
I know. I'll just go ahead and share out. Here, show a slide just for the effort, just because of time. Go to slide 20.
Okay.
So let's see what they wrote. Humanity first, right? So looking at that practice or that strategy, what does that look like in our practice? And so what are we going to implement, right? So thinking about creating connections, maybe having a morning meeting where students can share would be great. Thinking about how you can incorporate journaling into your practice. And then looking at, and then just recognizing everybody has a different situation. You want to take it over, Dr. Aviles, and keep sharing out for breakout room 1?
All right. I can't see it. Can you make it bigger, or where can I make it bigger?
Well, I could keep going, and then you can just add on if you want. How's
Okay,
that?
I got it. So you did what we implement, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay, so under desired outcomes, we talked about showing our students how to take care of themselves first and to express their needs, because it is important, like Maslow's hierarchy, you need to take care of yourself and be able to be ready socially and emotionally to be doing that. So we talk about having check-ins with students and knowing more about the students as individuals. That's important, right? We want them to learn, but we need to know who they really are and what their needs are, so that they are be able to be open to learning. And what becomes difficult at times is when students share information beyond our skill set. And this is when I also mentioned that this is when we have to maybe take the time to say, I don't know the answer to that, or even talk to the student afterwards and maybe refer them whether to the counselor or to a social worker or even to district personnel that can take care of that. Because yes, it is true that sometimes they have concerns that they express that we as individuals or our teachers don't have the answers. When it comes to what evidence will we collect, well, we talk about journaling, we talk about conferencing, having the students do activities through art, maybe drawing or through music, creating a song, or through poetry, or maybe pop. And sharing sometimes is all they need. They just need to just have an ear to listen, so that they can feel that sense of validation that we value who you are, and we validate what's going on, and we're here to support you. When it comes to who's responsible, really everyone, teachers, principals, support personnel, even at times, at school, sometimes some of the students will go and talk to the secretary because they felt comfortable and welcomed by her, and even through custodial staff as well. So really everyone, and also district level staff is also responsible to be able to provide support, whether it's through dyslexia, whether it is through the English learner department, or whether it is through district psychologists or whoever. So in reality, everyone, and even if we tap into community organizations, also they will be able to support schools. Like we know down in the Valley, all those organizations that Aurelio work with, that provide support to the schools and to the students and the families. The cost, it would be nice to have a plan for administrators in place, any of resources. And the cost can be free. In some cases, there might be minimal costs, but what the group decided was that it would be good for administrators to have like a menu of all the different resources that the school is able to provide.
That's nice.
For the families.
That's great.
And
that's great. Thank you so much. I really love the idea of the menu of resources. That's super important. I love that everybody's on board. It's a whole campus effort and plan. I'm seeing in the chat some great ideas of how the administrators and the kind of those in charge of the master schedule at the school can help to get creative with the student schedules to build in that time, whether it's the first period or something called spot, which might be a couple times a day, where it's a quick 10-15 minute check-in with almost like a homeroom to really help, reestablish that the relationship, check in on students. Are you okay? Right? Like, I think we did a lot of check-ins online, like, put your emoji of how you feel or what kind of weather would you be today. But during the school day, especially like I think of middle school with class periods, how and when are we checking in on our students and their well-being and how they're doing, right? That's so important, especially as we're thinking about re-engaging and building our way back after COVID, right?
I think I was sharing with them that I had a teacher will have first 5 minutes. It was actually 3 students every day that can do that. And they can either share a celebration or a concern or just anything they wanted to talk about. And that actually built a sense of belonging and a sense of camaraderie. And it felt safe. And it was a unison type of group. They felt like a family. And even the teacher will actually discuss or say a few things. So everything, it was great.
That's great. I'm seeing in the chat, it just really benefited students. And beyond just relationships and SEL. It was looking at their grades, what work do you have? How can we help you? It's that support time that should be built in for all students. I think that's important for all schools to consider, and take these ideas to your administration if you're in the classroom level, and if you're at the top, figure out who you can connect with to bring this idea down. Love it. All kids
I
are
think
doing
in the interest of and I think in the interest of time, we'll have Ashley and Kimberly share. Just tell us what slide you want to be on, and I'll move it to that slide. So let's go ahead and move to Ashley, and then we'll move to Kimberly, because we are 9 minutes away from lunch, you guys, and we don't want to. We know that we're standing between you and lunch. So, Ashley, take it away, and go ahead and unmute your mic and camera if you want.
It's gonna do it. Go, Camry.
Camry, it's Camry. Okay, come on, Camry.
Okay, Camry. Okay, let me make her a presenter real quick. And then Camry, you should be able to unmute your mic now.
Yeah, somewhere at the top, Camry.
Yeah, you should see an icon that looks like a little microphone and a camera icon. And you can turn on your camera or not. It's up to you. But if you can unmute your mic, that would be amazing, and just share. So
can y'all hear?
Yes.
Yeah. You got it.
Okay, so well, how do I start this? I just read from
tell us what slide you're on. Yeah.
22.
Okay, let's go to 22.
Okay, and then I just read, right?
Yeah, just a couple off each one. Yeah, whatever you want.
Okay, so it says what we implement. We put team bonding or building at main event. I don't know if a lot of y'all are familiar with what main event is in San Antonio. It's just a place where you can eat and play games and do bowling, things like that. So that's what we implemented. Also shared meals, fillings, check-ins, journaling, writing prompts, game time, social gatherings, planting a garden in an area for a community in need. So basically like a children's shelter, senior housing, a veterans home, things like that. And then for desired outcomes, what we want is for the students to feel comfortable, a place where they could have a voice, serotonin, mental health, a connection. Students take responsibility for which group they want to support in the planting of a garden, and then increased awareness of a broader community beyond school. And then what evidence we collect, how to evaluate is writing prompts, observing students' reactions, noticing increased listening skills. So like if they're asking about us or like each other, their friends, like how they're doing, things like that. And then a student survey, relationship with others, and feedback from the community. And then who's responsible or who supports would be all community members, meaning like parents, chaperones, programs, things like that. And then the cost for it would be like grants, sponsorships, donations, donors, fundraisers, and that's about it.
Those are great ideas. And those are all for which best practice, the relationships one?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay, just making sure. Great. Thank you so much. I love those ideas. I think team building for, with students, for students, and then incorporating these socials and team building for the staff. I think I'm hearing that was when that time is made, time and space is made for that. It really goes a long way to rebuild those connections. And that's what we're really shooting for as we're building our way back. That's awesome. That's great. Thank you so much for sharing. Yay. We have one more.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, if Kimberly would like to share just a quick little overview of what you guys talked about.
It's Kim, please. And you can go to slide 33.
Slide 33.
Both Becky and Wendy we kind of approached this because the things that we were going to do, we were already doing because it's already back after COVID. So we kind of took it as what did we do now? So both Becky and Wendy, actually slide 32, sorry, did a lot of work with the IXL program as far as utilizing all of the components there, especially with the diagnostic and data analysis, in order to provide more specific differentiation in order to be more engaging with students. So something just changed.
Uh-oh, what happened?
There you go. Someone's hitting the buttons up top.
Oh, okay.
Oh, no worries.
So they were looking at, of course, observations, and we're actually looking at that bottom part of the table, looking at the students' achievement, but also growth scores, and being sure that everybody is involved, especially with Wendy being a special education teacher and doing co-teaching, that it doesn't just fall on those that are doing the intervening, but on the general ed teachers as well. And they were both able to use some creative funding to be able to get that expanded component from the IXL. On my end, I work at a division level with induction, coaching, teacher leadership, mentorship. So we are looking holistically at making sure that incoming teachers understand the different instructional models so that they can approach their instruction in different ways, not just direct instruction, but maybe a PBL would be more appropriate, or whatever the case may be. And involving not just the teachers and administrators, but the mentors as well. And typically our professional development is a full day conference style, but that's been a challenge because of the substitute situation. So we're hoping, we've done some alternatives, but we're hoping to get back to that next year. So that's what I'll share from the work that we did in our group.
This is great. Thank you. I'm so glad you brought up some creative solutions for this. I know it's, and we have to be flexible on the dime, right? Like right away, if we can't get subs, what are we going to do differently to help reach this need and have this moment where we can help teachers develop and have time to develop these different practices and implement them in their practice. So I know we've got to wrap up. I'm talking super fast. If we can go to slide 41, way to go to all our groups. I know we didn't get to everybody like we wanted to, but thankfully you were able to kind of think about your own space and how to put some of these practices into works next school year. That's super important as we're building back and we're planning ahead. So I'm going to go to slide 41. Slide 41 has the contact info. Please email us if you want to talk things out a little bit more and get ideas. IDRA has so many different offerings to support your campuses, but also Michelle and I just love connecting with people and love learning from you and supporting your work. So feel free to snap a picture of this slide with your phone or copy paste our emails for your reference. On the next slide, we've got our IDRA has, again, like I said, so much to offer. Dr. Avila's brought up how we have a Learning Goes On resources to support as we are building our way back. So again, join our email list, follow us on YouTube. We have all of our webinars on YouTube, so feel free to just take a deep dive into topics of your interest. And lastly, please complete our survey. We're going to stop now so you have some time to give us your thoughts. How did the session go? What did you like? What did you enjoy? What information do you want more of? And we would love to connect with you again afterwards. You have the link to this presentation. So that was our goal, is that we had our slide deck, but we also had a workspace to get your thoughts and for us to collaborate together on. So thanks again, Michelle. Thank you. It was great working with you. And thank you for the positivity and the nice comments in the chat. Thank you so much, everyone. Enjoy the rest of the convening. Last day, super exciting.
Yes, thank you so much for spending the morning with us, and we hope that it was helpful to you. And again, we're here to support you in any way that we can. So a hearty goodbye, but not a farewell.
Yay.